Welcome to Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws, the podcast that cuts through the rubbish to explore the world of neurodiversity. I'm your host, Nick King.
And I'm your host, Kate Fox. And together we're here to explore, understand, and celebrate being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world. From ADHD and autism to dyslexia and other quirky brains, we talk about it all.
And go off on tangents. So, whether you're neurodivergent, love someone who is, or you're just curious about neurodivergent minds, you are in the right place.
Let's get ready to juggle some words and maybe even a few chainsaws, metaphorically, of course.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back with me, Nick King, and my fabulous host, Kate Fox, for another episode of Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws. And this week, we're going to talk to you about our coffee orders and maybe some tea for those non-coffee drinkers. I feel like these are two very important beverages.
Yes. In fact, for me, it's necessary to have both of them for a balanced life, but that may not be the case for everybody. But they are important, aren't they? For more reasons than is immediately obvious. So do you want to start us off, Nick? Why? Oh, okay. Well, first of all, how do you take your coffee?
Okay, so if we're like going through a large chain with a green symbol on the front, hi Starbucks, you can pay us commission. I spend plenty of money at your place. So I will have a caramel macchiato grande with 2 extra shots of coffee in the blonde roast, please.
And if I am there, I will take a single shot latte with skinny milk, medium. That's not even the proper term, is it? But I do say medium, and it seems to get me a medium.
It's a grande, but yeah.
Grande. No sugar. Thank you. I've gone off the that chain's coffee anyway. It's a bit, but that is what I would get if I was there.
I think it's one of the reasons that I order the blonde roast, but also the blonde roast has more caffeine in it. Do you know the lighter the shade of bean, the more caffeine it contains.
I did not know that at all.
Facts available on this podcast.
Yes, good facts. So do you ever I mean, is it a seamless thing to get this order? Does it ever go wrong? And how is it when it goes wrong, if so?
Occasionally it has gone wrong. Sometimes and that's why I've started saying 2 extra shots of coffee, because when I've said 2 extra shots, sometimes I've ended up with 2 extra shots of syrup, and nobody needs that much syrup in coffee. Like no one, not even if you were American, no one needs that much syrup in coffee. And then sometimes they're like, are you sure you want 2 extra shots of coffee? And I'm like, let's not be judging my caffeine intake, people. Thank you. Not so much at Starbucks, particularly not my local Starbucks, who question me when I don't put my normal order in, as to what is wrong with me that day. But like other places I've been, they're like, but it already has 2 shots of coffee in it. And I'm like, yes, I have unmedicated ADHD, which is also not quite true anymore, but it was true for 39 years that I had unmedicated ADHD. But I think maybe we should share that, because I don't think everybody knows that. So obviously coffee is a stimulant, and we know that. But I think what a lot of people don't know is that ADHD medication is also a stimulant. I think people assume that it is somehow some sort of depressant, but it's not. Actually, it's somebody once explained it to me. Fabulous doctor at SIPS, CNDS actually, that what happens is the frontal lobe of our brain goes slower than the rest of it. And I'm making a fabulous and helpful hand gesture for everyone who's listening to the podcast. But the rest of the brain's going quicker, so then they're not aligned. And then, so what you need to do is you bring up the front of the brain to align with the rest of the brain, and that allows for a regulated flow. It's all very sort of nicely linear, hopefully.
So a lot of people at the moment are out there self-medicating their ADHD with coffee, aren't they? And they're just don't know.
Mm.
And so the one fact I kind of knew was that if coffee had the paradoxical impact on you of calming you down instead of wiring you up, that would be a really good indicator that it was ADHD you were working with. So this is a funny one for me because coffee has become very important to me since the pandemic. But the way it's more obviously important to me is in my morning routine. It's part of my routine to go out to a cafe and get a latte. So at Colour Coats Coffee, I don't need it to be single shot actually because it's quite a mild coffee. So for me, consciously, it is about the taste. And I love it at Colour Coats Coffee because it's the bright, satisfyingly yellow cup, which helps wake me up. And I have my latte and I love the taste of it. It's good coffee there. And I sometimes go to other cafes, but I'm more likely to ask for single shot because, and again, I think to myself, oh, it's just about the taste. And there are certain tastes of coffee that I love. Oh, Pilgrim's coffee on Holy Island, it's so nice. And this has become a thing. So it is partly about the routine of going outside, having the walk, having something to get up for. But as it happens, and it is unusual that I'm recording this podcast without having done my morning routine of going out for the coffee first. And it's only because we've recorded a bit earlier than usual. And I was like, oh, it's fine. I'll just have a cup of tea. It's fine. I'll go. And I am actually, my brain, I think, is a little woollier than usual, which of course would indicate that generally I am partly relying on coffee for some stimulant effect.
I think you've struggled with your words a little bit more today than you usually do, and like finding them. Like
Yeah.
we were talking about sort of grasp in another podcast that like some of your words have been slightly outside of your grasp, which isn't usual for you. Do you know what I mean? And before, and this was the point. So like I was talking to a young person the other day who interestingly works in Starbucks, about sort of like how much coffee I was drinking and the fact that I've now gone to get ADHD meds. And he was obviously quite young and he's like, oh, I'm completely into embracing the chaos. And I was like, yeah. And when you're young, embracing the chaos is awesome and it feels cool. And then you might hit a point where you're having 30 shots of coffee a day and it's still not cutting it. And that's where I was. I was on a good 30 shots of coffee a day at
No
least.
way.
Like at a minimum. Like that was, that was like at the bottom end. And then it still wasn't cutting it. And it was also actually getting to the point where it was affecting my iron absorption. Because coffee like affects you absorbing iron. So like using it as your stimulant sort of potentially can only get you so far after a certain sort of amount. And this is sort of this dismissal around like, private ADHD diagnosis, so like self-identification of like particularly our generation, and it even goes as far as particularly women. People like have no idea what you're doing for coping strategies,
Yeah.
like with stimulants. I mean, I know a lot of people who do like Monsters and Red Bulls and other kind of like energy drinks and things like that. But we're gonna stick on sort of coffee and possibly tea.
And
Um,
tea's very important. But going back, so when you so what would happen? How did you feel then in yourself when you'd kind of run out of the effects of your 4-shot coffee and needed another one? What happened inside you or outside you?
just like literally can feel my brain getting woollier.
Yeah.
Quite literally. And there was a point, not last year, the year before, yeah, 2022, where I had surgery and I wasn't allowed to drink coffee for 4 weeks. And I that was the point where I decided to go get a diagnosis, because I was sitting trying to do a form, and like I hate forms. But it was basic information. It was my name, it was my address, and it was like my business details. It was not complicated. And I sat and I cried at this form because I could not get my head to do the form. And then I was like, right, naff to it. We're gonna have to have like caffeine. And then 15 minutes later I could do the form. And that was that. And then yeah, and I think we all have these moments. We have these moments where we're like, you know, this isn't just something that I think, this isn't kind of some sort of imposter syndrome. And then maybe those are the moments where you're like, right, okay, I need to go and get a diagnosis and or medication. This is getting, you know, like you need to do something
Yeah,
more
yeah.
or else outside of like self-medication or coping strategies.
And actually, I suppose coffee is a very socially acceptable self-medication, isn't it? Compared to, oh, I was, mainlining heroin or needed cocaine to get through the day type of thing. And
Yeah.
yes, I suspect, I mean, maybe because I'm a complete coffee wimp. I mean, I very occasionally might have 2 lattes in a day, and I'll feel it. I really feel it, and my heart rate's up, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm a bit anxious." Does that, I wonder if that means that because at the moment, I am undiagnosed ADHD, and I think I am ADHD. But oh, yeah, Nick's nodding strongly, but it does not appear that, or at least maybe the diagnostic effect of coffee, the coffee that I feel I need. I don't know. I'm not.
The thing
It's
is with an ADHD, I mean, obviously there are non-stimulant ADHD medications and they do like suit some people better. And that's a lot more about sort of your dopamine and your serotonin and how that hits in your brain. And how well, like there was a fabulous TikTok the other day describing sort of like your memory and the abilities to connect things as like a slippy slope. And how like the dopamine makes the slippy slope sticky. So if you put something on it, it'll stick if you have enough dopamine, but if you don't, it just slides to the abyss. And she's fabulous, and I'm gonna have to remember her handle and cite her. Um, and then so there are non-stimulant medication, and I do know a lot of people diagnosed and not diagnosed with ADHD that do struggle with coffee, and it makes them feel sort of like jittery and stuff. So I
Oh,
think
yeah,
there
yeah.
is the other side of it as well. Um, but then it's all very personal, isn't it? Like everyone's reaction to ADHD medication is personal, and like your side effects are personal, and how much your body like absorbs and how quickly it goes through it is incredibly personal. And that's why there's different ADHD medications that absorb in your stomach, and then some that absorb in your gut, and then some like are based on proteins and control how it goes through your liver. Nick is not a medically qualified person. For full clarity, this is not advice.
This is so informed, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to come to you if I decide to.
Um, but yeah, there are lots of different types that work for lots of different people, and everybody needs different amounts. It's not like, it's not like, I don't know, Calpol. Like it's not based on weight and size and stuff like that. Like it's very, very individual, and that's why everyone needs like a period of personal titration to figure out what's going on like with them personally. Um, yeah.
It feels like it will be, I mean, it would be useful if me being able to say to someone, oh, well, I'm the type where coffee makes me a bit jittery, but where I need a little hit of something to get me going. I mean, it would be
Yeah.
good if that translated into, well, you need this medication. And actually, I think that's why tea is so important to me, because it's probably a slower release. So tea is like a mythical thing in my life, the importance of a cup of tea. Partly I associate it with Yorkshire. And do you know, sometimes it's really nice. I'll do a gig now and people will be like, do you want Yorkshire tea? Because they feel they're offering me the tea of
Of
my,
your homeland.
yeah. And I'll be like, no, to be honest, I prefer PG tips. Anyway, I need.
Shocking facts, Kate
Yeah,
Fox.
exactly. And actually my daily tea, this tea, is chai tea anyway, because I like the taste, I like the cinnamoniness and the spiciness. So I the other day I had don't know. So a lot was going on that day. Uh, well, as it happens, and this takes us on to our next coffee related topic. I'd met someone for a coffee, and and we'd had a very intense conversation, and then I had to give a Buddhist talk. It was a whole thing, and I noticed my at Buddhist class, not just generally, not like in the park. That would have been weird, wouldn't it? And I just like compulsively needed tea. Before I went in to give the talk, I was like, can I have tea? And then as soon as I came out of the talk, I was like, I really need tea. And I don't normally make a cup of tea in the Buddhist centre. I just go home. And it was vital. And after a gig, I did an hour-long new show the other week, and the host asked, if there was anything I needed after. I was like, could I just have a cup of tea? He was like, oh. And for me, I think it is. There's something about the whatever's in the tea, but there is also the tranquilizing, the routine of it again. And it's warm and it's soothing and it's a punctuation and it's a moment. It's all, for me, it's all those things enwrapped. And it's important that it's tea. It wouldn't be the same if it was a Ribena for me. I don't think that would do the same thing, but it's all the elements wrapped together. And I seem to take it like people, or to need it like people would say, I need a beer now. So I need a tea. And I have a new way of describing how I need my tea, which is more beige than brown, which is helpful. Would that baffle you? And because I used to say quite milky, more milky than most people, but not to psychotic levels. But that didn't get as good results as more beige than brown, because it's just a simple colour description. Some people really step up to more beige than brown with tea. They really do. And some people, all I can say is it prods their inner demons in a way that's not good, and it traumatizes them. But to me, it's very simple. More beige than brown.
My tea is definitely more dark brown than beige, I have to say. I'm a very little milk kind of person. In fact, the pot that I have here, and it is quite a big pot, it's in like in a hot flask, and this is tea and not coffee for a change, because medication. But this had 2 tea bags put in it, like, and it's probably about, it might be 2 cups worth, but like it definitely strong, and it's Yorkshire tea.
It is Yorkshire tea. That's good. But again, so it sounds like you're going for the strength of the substance.
Yeah.
I'm going for something about the comfort more, because I maybe even don't need the strength of the substance. There's that thing, isn't there, of feeling able to ask for exactly what you need. And that kicks in for me with the tea, because I think you're more likely to be offered tea out and about, aren't you? Just as a guest, do you think?
Yes.
Coffee? And so again, to be able to say more beige than brown.
And tea's often safer. Like, there's a lot of bad coffee out there, and
Yeah.
I don't want bad coffee. I don't want bad coffee in my life. I don't. There's nothing much more disappointing than bad coffee or bad tea, but like particularly bad coffee.
And I always say that, you're safer just with tea if you're out. But it's interesting. I think we might be, in some ways, it's not so binary, but we're talking, I think it's a bit of autistic trait. Like, I'm talking about the routine and the comfort and having it specifically right. And it's almost more like the physiological ADHD stuff around the strength of the substance. As I say, I know it's not that binary, and a lot of autistic people will be self-medicating just in a slightly different way. But I feel those are some of the elements.
No, I agree. And I think a lot of sort of autistic ADHD, however you want to phrase it, it is about the specifics. Do you know what I mean? It is about like it's right or it's wrong, by a long way. And I'm very, very conscious and careful of, like, if I'm making people tea or coffee, that, like, I want the specifics. I want to know how you want it.
Yeah, and that's because you know the importance of the specifics. But then there is some people out there, and I was going to say, oh, these people are not autistic people, but they might be. They might just be very super people pleasing, well masked autistic people, which is, How would you like your tea? Oh, just as it comes. Just as it comes. Imagine. Yeah, some people say
No,
that. They do.
no, just no, just no. I want to know. I want to know how you want it. There's also that sort of that interpretation though, isn't it? Like I hear a lot of people talk about like, do you want to go for a coffee? I don't always mean coffee, you know. I mean shared space and time in a location with beverages.
Yeah.
Or
But
even beverages. If you're really against all beverages, I know somebody who is. I know somebody who like doesn't do tea or coffee at all. Um, Slightly judgmental of it, but like I just want to share the space with you. Do you know what I mean?
I know, and I was reminded of that. There was a thread on something, or another, whether it was an ADHD group or an autistic X thread, whatever it was, and someone was saying, I used to think that they meant coffee, and well, I don't like coffee, so I would always say no. And I have finally realised it's not literal, and it's okay if you order a strawberry milkshake. But of course, coffee does have particular connotations, doesn't it? If saying go for coffee to me it means it's basically, it's not a drink. Let's go for a drink means let's go to a pub. That's more of a sociable thing. But then there's also sex coffees, aren't there?
Like, do you want a cup of coffee? That was my best. That's all you go. That was
Was
it.
that
That
your
was my sex
your
coffee
Eddie Izzard
voice.
as well? Yeah. It's like he was sorry, it's like they were in the room. Like they were in yeah. Yeah, do you want to but you see, I would totally fall foul of this. So yeah, if someone said, "Do you want to come in for a coffee?" and you'd been somewhere, see, I would find it I wouldn't find it hard to refuse coffee, but I would find it hard to refuse tea. If there was going to be an extra cup of tea that was going to happen in the day, I wouldn't want to say no. But how would I know whether it was sex tea or just tea? And I don't have the skills. I genuinely
Don't have this. We don't know whether it's sex tea or just tea.
No.
Do you think Netflix and chill means watching Bridgerton? Because we need to talk about this.
Kind of, well, surely when people put it on their dating sites, dating profiles, they do mean that they enjoy Netflix and chill, and that means they're a bit boring.
Do they?
Oh, hang on. I am finding the edges of my, basically, as soon as I step into anything like dating territory, I'm like, oh, I'm really autistic. Don't ask me about the thing about we haven't got time anyway, we've only got 7 minutes, but I'm quite traumatized by the thing about the bears at the moment. Would you like to be in a forest with a man or a bear? And we're all saying a bear because and this is genuinely the case, and not to be underplayed, women's sense of possible sexual violence or unpredictable behaviour is heightened. Men don't realise how much. But at the same time, you don't want to be in a forest with a bear, do you?
I want to be in a forest with a panda.
Now that, of course, now that
Like above all men, possibly even the one I married. I want a panda. Like now. Can I have a
cute.
panda, please?
And I endorse. It's back to specifics, isn't it? It's just a
It's back to specific.
general man. Anyway, sorry, we digress. So I'm really autistic around this, and actually,
And maybe actually you've taken the bear man debate too literally as well.
like,
Yeah,
well, to me, it's and this is so it's funny, isn't it? Because I think now I'm like, oh, I'm a really good translator between worlds, but I cannot really. I'm trying to empathize with people, but I'm like, you should, all the other people, you should be taking this literally, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. It's really important. It's very specific. And so you need to really think about bears very closely. But no, they're not thinking about bears. So yes, this is a live in process. Somebody being determinedly, I can't see this another way. And if therefore, back to our actual topic, coffees. Do you want to come for a coffee? Shall we have a coffee?
And then when and where and what time?
Exactly.
And can it be Starbucks or is it going to be dodgy coffee? What about the new coffee shop that I've never been to where I don't know if it's like bitter coffee or sweet coffee? And then if I put 2 extra shots in a bitter coffee, that might be too much. And it's like, I don't know if everybody realizes that this is how much our brains process. Do you want a cup of coffee?
Exactly. And actually, so I'm quite obviously novelty driven. So I'm always excited to go to a new cafe. And so I've got really good at reading the signals that will tell me whether it might be good coffee and whether it might be. And I will just ask a barista, is your coffee quite bitter? And then I'll have a single shot if not. And then they might turn that like a there's a particular shop in Whitley Bay. They are quite sniffy about my single shot requirement. They're openly quite sniffy about it. Probably it's not.
So I'm getting judged for the extra ones that I'm taking from you, and you're getting judged for the less
Yeah.
coffee that you're having.
Yeah. So this is another. What would you can't ask people for clarity about
They
coffee,
take it personally. Like, we just want more information, and they
that
see it as a slight.
and that applies for both literal coffee and tea, and then these metaphorical coffees, which is really let us spend some time together. Let us get to know each other. Let us have a bit of a business chat. Let us have a
Yeah.
yeah. I hesitate as to no. I've started now. So I have. So I was unclear whether a particular invitation. So there's a certain type of coffee I have, and this is quite common in the world of poets and artistic people, and it's kind of a work coffee. You kind of you work in the same field, so you're just going to have a general chat, and it's a little bit networky actually, but it's also sociable because you're doing the same thing. So I kind of thought that someone might be asking me for that sort of coffee because they were a creative person, so I dubbed it a freelance coffee because it was going to happen in the week, and I said we're going for a freelance coffee. But I think I might have just created a phrase that could add more confusion. But it's because I was trying to clarify the exact type of coffee that we were going for,
The nature of the coffee.
nature of the coffee.
And then
Go on.
like that's all about sort of like different relationships, because I bet you never questioned our freelance coffee when we went and like had coffee. But
No,
then
but that was in but that was almost that was actually well.
clarified, because I'll have clarified it.
Well, yes, in a way. And actually, it was because your friend said that we should be friends. But actually, and I was like, okay. And I was a bit like, I've got enough friends, thanks. But,
Glad there was room for one more.
well, and also, because I knew, in a way, it was in the realm of freelance coffee, because clearly we would have really interesting work to do together. So actually, it didn't need that clarifying, but a lot of ones. Yeah, this is our message to the world, isn't it? But the world will maybe clearly not listen. Okay, this is my little plea to the world, my humble little plea. Don't forget, some of us really appreciate clarity and what you might see as too much information or too much detail. For some of us, that's never a thing. Just give us more coffee and tea and detail about every aspect of our coffee and tea than we could possibly ever have conceived someone else might need. So in summary, mine is a single shot latte. More beige than brown. So I don't need to say that for a latte because it's taken as red. Anyway, more beige than brown, preferably giving me a deep inner feeling of comfort and warmth that all is well with the world.
Thanks for tuning in to Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws. We're so glad you joined us today to explore the fascinating world of neurodivergence with your hosts, me, Nick King.
And me, Kate Fox. If our conversation sparked a thought, a question, or even a smile, don't keep it to yourself. Drop us a line at hello@neurotypicalsdon'tjugglechainsaws.co.uk or visit our website Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws.co.uk to write in. We'd love to hear from you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, consider leaving us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast platform.
Until next time, keep embracing the unique ways you juggle the chainsaws of life.